Hello everyone, I am Raghav Nagpal of course BBA Semester 2 Evening Shift and would like to give the business communication video presentation on the topic barriers to communication exist in the classroom scenario. And second, I will explain the measures to overcome barriers. Now, what are the barriers of classroom communication? Communication is an important part of teaching because the students have to be able to understand the message that the teacher is trying to convey. Students also have to be able to communicate effectively with each other. There are a number of factors in the classroom, and many of these factors exist in the day-to-day life as well that can affect the act the barriers to effective communication. First one is verbalism. Excessive verbalism can no longer be condoned, particularly in the today's world of communication, which offers much more effective substitutes from the offer from the other avenues of expression. Such verbalism is a definitely limiting barrier of effective classroom communication. Second, anxiety. One of the major emotional cause of communication barriers is the student's anxiety. If a student is anxious and unsure, they is less likely to speak up in the class. This is true, and even the situations where the student does not understand what the teacher is saying and needs clarification. Anxiety stops students from participation in the group discussions because they don't want to be the made at the center of attention and they are afraid of other people's opinions of them. Third one is a language. Language is the primary way of communication through ideas and thoughts. If the teacher and the student don't speak in the same language, there will be a major communication barrier. If the teacher speaks English and the students are mostly English as second language students, then there will be communication problems since the students may not understand everything the teacher says. Fourth one is expression. Communication is never exact. The initiator tries to put his ideas into words and then the recipient has to decode those words to understand the idea. When the teacher or student doesn't have the ability to choose the proper words to describe the ideas to what they want to convey, this will create a communication barrier in classroom. An example of this could be a teacher who is a professional mathematician but an ineffective math teacher because the only way she can convey ideas is to use the math jargon that the students cannot understand. Fifth one is the reference confusion. Different explanations and the different application of the same word convey different meaning to every one of the students for each of the background varies and thus influence interpretation and understanding that reference confusion occurs. For these reasons, proper communication between the teachers and the students are not possible. Reference confusion is common in reading. The ability of two people to use the same words and arrive at completely different understandings is one of the great dangers in our classrooms. Different areas of knowledge, experience, background, etc. are responsible for the reference confusion. Sixth one is the daydreaming. A common through avoidable barrier of effective communication occurs when the learner daydreams. That is when he turns away from the flow of classroom communication and dwells upon his own privately recalled understanding and experiences, which are more preoccupying than those who are identified with classroom activity. Students are failed to keep their full attention in the classroom if they think the movie that was seen by them in the previous night. As the result, they cannot give their proper attention to the lecture to the important teachers that creates a great problem in the classroom communication. This barrier can be lessened or surmounted by increasing the understandability of the classroom through the use of effective audiovisual classroom techniques. Seventh is the imperceptions. Students are not able to understand the teacher's important class if they have any physical problem. Psychological function can do nothing in this case. So students have may gather information and knowledge very superficially in classroom. Eighth one is the disinterest. Disinterest arises among the students due to lack of available teacher materials, teaching system, and efficient teacher in the classroom. To eradicate distance, teachers should include some motion pictures, films, modems, specimens, film strips, charts, diagrams, tapes, records, television, and many other audiovisual materials. Variety in classroom procedures and teaching materials usually heightens the interest and enthusiasm with which pupils approach their work. Ninth one is the physical discomfort. Student may feel discomfort due to the insufficient necessary internal or external equipment in the classroom like fan, light, air, etc. For their reason, they may lose their interest to hear the lectures of the teachers. This type of barrier should be considered in the classroom for proper communication between students and teachers. And the modern classroom must be thought of as providing an efficient environment for learning. This environment should be characterized by light control, which permits the use of projected materials, by temperature control, which encourages mental activity. All these will be controlled by the teacher in the classroom. Other barriers may be economic factor, mental factor, educational factor, organizational and religious social factor, political factor, racial factor, etc. After the above discussion, we may say that the communication is the unique process of a social, cultural, political, and economical development. All developmental activities largely depend on the proper communication. Classroom learning will also become effective with the proper communication between the students and teachers. Some barriers affect in the classroom communication. Audio-visual instruction may solve these communication barriers. Now, what are the measures to overcome these barriers? Measures to overcome the barriers to effective communication are: clarify the ideas before communication. Second, communicate according to the need of the receiver. Third, consult other before communicating. Fourth, be aware of the language, tone, and content of message. Fifth, convey the help things to help and value the listeners. Sixth, ensure proper feedback. Seventh, communicate for present as well as the future. Eighth, follow up communications. Ninth, be the good listener. First one is clarify the ideas before communication. Any issue to be communicated to the subordinate should be clearly and completely studied and analyzed by the superior. Moreover, it should be stated that in such a manner that subordinate can easily understand it in the same sense in which the superior wants him to receive it. Second, communicate according to the needs of the receiver. The level of misunderstanding and the education of the subordinates must be very clear to the management. Manager should try to communicate according to the level. Third, consult others before communicating. It is desirable to involve others in developing a plan for communication. Consulting the subordinates before communicating the message helps to gain the ready acceptance and will cooperation. Fourth one, be aware of the language, tone, and the content of message. The language, tone, and the content of message to be communicated are very important aspects of an effective communication. The language should be clear, simple, and easily understandable. Similarly, the tone and the content of the message should not provide any harm to the sentiments of listeners, rather than it should stimulate them to give response. Fifth one, convey things of help and value to listeners. It is always better to know the needs and interest of the listener before communicating the message. The response from the listener is surely obtained if the message is relatedly directed directly or indirectly to the needs or interests. Sixth one, ensure proper feedback. Proper feedback help in improving the communication process. The sender should ask questions regarding the message conveyed, and the receiver should be encouraged to respond to communication. Seventh one is the communicate for present as well as the future. In order to maintain consistency, the communication should be aimed at meeting the both present and as well as the future requirements of the organization. Follow up communication. Regular follow up and the review of the instruction given to the subordinates help in improving difficulties in implementing the instructions. And last but not the least, be a good listener. It has been well established that listening attentively solve more than half the problems in any organization. Hence, to overcome all likely communication barriers, a manager should try to be a good listener too. Thank you for listening my presentation so patiently.